Hey Pox community, what's up? Bombman007 sitting in with another edition of PoxNora Unwrapped, and this time this edition goes green. That's right, and we don't mean green as in sour, we mean green as in dev. Sitting in with me and sharing a very special battle group with us from the full faction Kathir Forest is none other than our lead designer, the head man, the big cheese, the man himself, Mr. Sokolov. What's up, Sokolov?
Hi everybody.
Man, I'll tell you what, we're really excited that you're sitting in with us and making this video, and you've decided to share with us a full faction Kathir Forest battle group. And just a few seconds ago, you told me that this is the most meta battle group that you've played in a while. Why are you playing this battle group? Is there a particular reason?
Yeah, there actually is. I mean, typically I play sort of obscure stuff. I was running Furpins and AP Denial before anybody cared to run those things. Part of the reason I'm running this battle group is because of the focus that I have put on in terms of the lore for Kathir Forest recently. And so I was sort of invested in them a little bit more emotionally because this expansion really ties them together and has the whole Chain Fae thing was basically the centerpiece for how this arc of these next couple of expansions is going to go. So I was interested in playing them from that perspective.
Oh man,
and it turns out that with just the new additions and the buffs, they have become a lot more playable, and Stellar Horizon has turned out to be a very good spell.
Absolutely, man. It's a lot of fun, and I'm really glad to see you running this style battle group because it is meta, and with the flavor especially. I mean, a lot of the runes scream flavor in this one. You Chain Fae, the Rage of Circle, so we really look forward to, as we go through these runes, to seeing your take on these individual runes. The first rune in your battle group is the Apprentice Mage. You've gone with the hit points and the Frost Nova upgrade. Anything special about the guy? Not a lot of folks run Apprentice Mage, Sokolov. Why are you running him?
Yeah, so I like him because a lot of times I can do a double deploy with Apprentice Mage and one of the other casters, especially if I don't draw Chain Fae. Then I get a different early advantage. I run him with the hit points and the Frost Nova just to have him stick around a little longer. And I use him mostly as harasser and distraction. And that's where the Frost Nova comes in. Even though it doesn't do a lot of damage, the slowed is useful. And I like to just bounce him around a little bit and trigger tower procs.
Cool deal. So 1x Apprentice Mage, hit point, and Frost Nova upgrade. Beau Mage, you've got one of these guys, Precision and Rain of Arrows. That pretty much seems to be his bucket of upgrades that most people go with. So he is a wizard, fits perfectly into the theme of the battle group. Any other special things that you use the Beau Mage for?
To be honest, I don't deploy him very often, which is kind of interesting. I deploy him primarily if I am facing a ranged battle group for blind fire, or if I need some alternative damage, because most of the deck is magic. But for the most part, I rarely actually deploy this one. Imbue Stun is really, really good, but I typically find that I have enough range in the deck to outposition most opponents. So the Imbue Stun becomes a little bit less useful, and my Alpha Strikes tend to be spell-based as opposed to champion lockdown-based. Very
cool. All right, so there you go, guys. Has the Beau Mage kind of in the back ranks, I guess. So not one that you're going to typically see out a lot. So now Chain Fae, a new rune from the last expansion. You've gone with the adaptive KF and the favor. Now she's on the list to be changed, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and why do you feel at this stage that she needs to be changed? Just an efficiency standpoint, or what?
It's mostly to deal with the fact that this deck is extremely efficient at spell spamming and casting multiple spells in the same turn. The favor on such a cheap champion makes it so that spell spam becomes very effective and makes certain spells like Cultivate the Earth and Combine Effort basically free spells to trigger the adaptive. And so she's basically double benefiting a lot on any spell cast. And I think she's playable without favor, and yeah.
Cool deal. So 2x Chain Fae, and you did mention, and this is one thing I hope you don't mind me asking, in your Cactus Crate here recently, you said Chains of Amaranth is going to be affecting fairies. Is that right? What exactly do you mean by that?
So right now, Chains of Amaranth only procs off wizards and elementals. and I'm going to update it so that it triggers out fairies.
Oh, okay. So you're going to be adding fairies into, when they're deployed, they're going to pick up the hit points as well.
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Fantastic. I kind of misread that there then. All right. So 2 times chain phase. Now, is she one of the runes that you try to get out as absolutely fast as possible, like everybody else?
In general, but she is kind of a tempo hit, and on certain maps you don't want to deploy her because you need a second champion to go after the second font. Usually if you deploy her, you delay your second deploy a little bit. So
okay, fantastic. All right, so there's the chain Fae. You've gone with just 1 times Elven Mage. A lot of folks have been running this guy 2 times because of just just sheer massiveness of him. You have gone with the loyalty and with the magic alkalite upgrades. So tell us about the Elven Mage. He's going to stay alive a while with magic alkalite, I guess, in your battle group.
Yeah, that's kind of the build I've gone for. I've ran Deflect for a while instead of Loyalty, and I ran Deflect instead of Magic Acolyte. But this is a deck that pokes a lot and doesn't necessarily get him into trouble too often, especially since later on you'll see I run Divert on the Fey Oracle. So, he's pretty well protected in that regard. I only run 1 now, but I used to run 2, but I have started incorporating a little bit more counters in the deck. So I believe when I took out the second one, an Cooley Slag went in, or the Fairy Trickster, I forget which. But I found that to work out better, since the main thrust of the deck is the spell spamming with the oracles, so he tends to take a backseat to deploying oracles anyway.
Okay. Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so 1 times Elven Mage, and then here's one that a lot of folks threw their hands up on. They kind of gave up on. We've certainly requested, maybe the cooldowns kind of be lowered and stuff, but you've got one here, a Fae Enchantress. You've gone with the Grant Tempo and the Hit and Run upgrades on her. So is this still a viable rune in your eyes?
I believe so. She is not in the same sort of category as the Elven Mage or the Fey Oracle, in that those two, the Elven Mage is obviously pure offensive, while the Oracle is more of an offensive support. She's almost purely support. But what she does in this deck is the Grand Tempo helps a lot in that it gives. It's usually not the upgrade that's taken either, but it gives a surprise extra AP to just about anything in the deck, aside from the ones that already have Tempo. And I use her typically to snag a Siphon, and then to also aid if I'm in the middle of a Shrine Rush, that kind of stuff. Prismatic Crystals and Fairy Dust pretty much can stall opponents long enough to allow me to get there. Additionally, I also deploy her if I'm facing a battle group that features high defense units with Soften.
Very cool. Yeah, the Soften is so she's utility galore for you then. So we'll look to see exactly, if you are able to deploy her in your match, exactly how all these things work together. So that's great.
Yeah, and she's actually was coming more from the KFST version of this deck, where I ran a lot of cheap multi-attack champions. This deck is sort of still modeled after that, in that I run the Apprentice Mage and that kind of stuff. A lot of low damage units, so the Soften helps a lot more in that regard than if you're running a bunch of Garus, for example, which have higher damage.
Sure. All right. Good stuff, man. So 1 times Fae Enchantress. And let me see if... Okay. Catching a little bit of stinking lag here. All right. Here we go. So the Fey Oracle. You've gone with 2 of these guys. They're the brand new legendary. Everybody run out and buy the legendaries up here from the newest expansion. So for 900 station cash, you get the legendary, a pack, and a couple tickets. So, or is it just 1 ticket, Sokolov?
I don't remember.
Okay.
What the 2 in this particular pack.
But anyway, the Fey Oracle, she's newest legendary out. You've gone with the Force Barrier and the Divert upgrades, and then what everybody, of course, is really applauding about is the Adaptive Kathir Forest upgrade on her. She's got a lot of other really cool stuff, especially with the spell reveal. She's a magical attack, which isn't anything new to KF, but wow, she starts out at relatively low damage, but Sokolov, she can really ramp up fairly quickly, especially in this type of battle group. So is that what you designed it to do? Is to really amp her up as quickly as possible?
Yes and no. I mean, she's supposed to be a bit of a spell play rune, sort of play off of the whole Oracle idea of where she's basically, starts out kind of small but grows over time based on your spell casting. So as I mentioned to you before we started recording, I played this deck prior to the Oracle coming out, and so the Oracle was sort of designed to fit into this particular deck and make it and become a centerpiece for this deck. So there's no question that we'll run two here. I am planning on nerfing her a little bit. With the chains adjustment, it may overall be a buff actually, so I have to consider that carefully.
Okay, gotcha. So we'll see exactly how you use the Fey Oracle in this type of mix. But 2 Oracles, and then you said that you had recently added this one into your battle group, the Fairy Trickster. And according to this, you run the Shadow Spawn and the Metamorphosis upgrades. Metamorphosis is just an incredible ability. Anti-big champ, tricky abilities, whatever. It completely gets around everything. Metamorphosis is just a great ability, and she also has counter spell mastery. So she's a fairly efficient rune, not a lot of damage again, and I guess that kind of goes back into your main style here. You've got a lot of hit and runners, I suppose. So what role does the Trickster play for you personally in this battle group?
Yeah, so on the hit and run thing, it's kind of funny because as much as this is as meta as I've run in a long time, it still sort of follows style that I've always played, where a lot of my decks have a problem with basically winning in that it tends to feature a lot of runes that don't have a lot of power, and a lot of times what ends up happening is I can be in a dominant position, but I can't finish a player off because I don't typically use a lot of the power runes, and I don't have the damage output or the spell set. And so this deck is different in that the spell set is fairly powerful, and there's a lot of stuff in here that helps me utilize the lower damage units. For her in particular, most of the reason I'm running her is the Counterspell Mastery and the Shadow Spawn. One thing that Shadow Spawn does is it forces your opponent to play very differently once the unit is out there, because he has to take into account the additional damage that could be there, or the Metamorphosis in this case. Counterspell Mastery is obviously very powerful. And a good spell counter. On Metamorphosis itself, I have to say that I'm not actually very good at using it, especially in this deck where I typically play a very standoffish approach. From what I've seen from other players, Metamorphosis is generally used in a one-rounding scenario, and I typically favor just outright overpowering something with many attacks and strategic novas as opposed to using Metamorphosis that way. But I'm trying to incorporate her a little more into my play because I do believe it is very useful. I just not used to it yet. Sure.
Okay. So 1x Fairy Trickster, Shadow Spawn, and Metamorphosis. All right. So another new rune that really helped the wizard theme tremendously, because you brought something to the theme, Mr. Sokolov, that it didn't have, and this rune brings 2 solid things to Cthulhu Force that it severely needed: tankiness and shatter, wrapped up in the Guardian of the Circle. So, tell us a little bit about the Guardian of the Circle. You've gone with obviously the Tough 3, which is a fantastic upgrade, and the Bind upgrades. I've seen, the Slowing Armor and some other upgrades on this guy, but first off, why only a 5-speed? Why couldn't we, muster another point of speed out of him? And, the toughness and binding, tell us about the Guardian of the Circle and what went through your head and stuff when you guys released this one.
Yeah, to be honest, right now I'm actually feeling like he's a little bit more efficient than he should be.
Okay.
But not too far out of line. So, with the whole Chains of Amaranth thing, the whole idea was to take a look at the 3 common sort of elements in the game: fire, ice, and electricity, and imbue the embodiments of what those elements represent into an elf. And that's where it sort of all comes from. So the rage is lightning, which is unpredictable and aggressive, and then the ice is a little bit more tanky and whatever, and then the fire obviously went to the light of the circle to to give her flavor. With him, yeah, I really wanted to give the wizards some melee tanking ability, which is something that they had typically lacked. I also recently buffed the Mage of Lament, which is, I don't believe I have him in this build, but that gives them a different style of melee character as well. So, I sort of went the full way here and gave them not only a melee wizard, but also one that can take a little bit of abuse. And I think, in some cases, some players, would say that, it's not a wizard flavor, but I think he feels like a wizard still.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I totally agree with that because of just the abilities you put on like Cold Snap and going with the ice theme on him. To me, he fits right perfectly into that wizard theme myself. So I've never had a problem with thinking otherwise as far as he goes. But he certainly brings that tankiness to the battle group that it severely needs, and you did it with very good creativity and style with that. So kudos on the Guardian of the Circle. 1 times Guardian of the Circle, and then you've got a Mentalist. If that's how you're probably going to say it completely different than the way I do down here in good old Southern North Carolina. But Mentalist, you've gone with the regen and with the damage. So that's interesting upgrade choices. And I was wanting to talk to you about that. I've never seen anybody take the regen on him. It's usually either the Magic Nova or the heal mass, and the damage seems to be auto-include on this guy. So why have you gone with him, and tell us a little about Mentalist, or however you pronounce him.
Yeah, so jumping back to the Guardian for just a second, I did play against, the other day against somebody who casted a Chief Oak's Blessing on him, and he was ridiculously hard to kill at that point.
Oh, nice. Okay.
It was very difficult, especially with my battle group, because it doesn't handle tough and defense too well in most cases. Anyway, Mentalist is obviously one of the strong heroes of the game. He's got the great range, the magic attack. There's not a particular reason why you wouldn't include him. So I shied away from Magic Nova because of the recent change to Throne, where I gave Magic Nova. So there's not much of a point in him having it if I can deploy Throne to Circle and give it to him anyway. So instead of heal mass, I've gone with regen because I typically try and get an attack off with him every turn if possible. So rather than trying to spend AP on heal mass, I'd rather he passively heals.
Okay, gotcha.
That's what it comes down to.
Sure. All right, makes perfectly good sense to me. So 1 times Mentalist, obviously, because he's being a hero. The Cooley Slag. So you've got one of these guys, a ton of utility pieces in here, and you've gone with the Premonition and the Miner. So no Sever Summons. Is there a particular reason for that?
So this is really funny because I have been talking to some players and they prefer forest forms about this build and combine effort and all that stuff. And so what's interesting about the Slag is that I had actually been running him with Sever for a long time, whenever I have him in a deck anyway. And Legato was saying that he really likes Premonition, and the Nidhogg and I were actually talking to him over there about it, and eventually I decided to give it a shot, and I definitely like it better. It practically won me a couple games where I was facing against Manic champions and that kind of stuff, so I'm a fairly strong opponent of Premonition now. I'm almost considering actually dropping Nora Miner to run him with Premonition and the Separate Summons, simply because he already generates a lot of Nora in this deck because of combined effort. So he does pay for himself in most games.
Very cool. So there you go. There's you some insider tips, guys. You heard it here first. So thanks for sharing that with us. So Premonition and the Nora Miner currently, man, maybe even consider moving that Nora Miner over to Sever Summons. Very interesting. So
yeah, the other thing about Sever Summons is that this deck has a lot of AEs, and so handling summons is typically not a problem for it. So
okay, excellent. Well, that's a bonus because there's a lot of those guys out there right now. And then here you go, man. This rune right here, you single-handedly brought the forums into flames with this rune. The design, I don't think there's anybody in the game, whether they like the rune or dislike the rune, that disagreed that the flavor is there. This guy is just oozing with flavor. So the design concept on this piece is absolutely tremendous and applauding. But what you did do is you burnt the house down with the limbo side effect on this guy. You've got Rage of the Circle. You have actually gone with the Electricity, Aura, and the Storm Alkalite upgrades. And you know that those are, I mean, outside the hostile, that's pretty much, you know, I've seen quite a few of those upgrades. So tell us about the Rage of the Circle.
So yeah, he's, you know, aside from the Chain Fate, he's the other sort of key piece to the story. And, you know, the whole idea is that there are ramifications to utilizing these sort of powers that are, you know, not typical. And so the chains were designed to do a very specific thing, and they're using it in a different manner now. And so we'll explore that a little bit more in the next expansion, where we tell the stories of what has actually transpired in Pox because they're using the chains. And so the Rage is sort of the first manifestations of what happens to people when they have been taken in too much elemental power. And that's sort of where Limbo is supposed to represent. For me, I don't run Hostile because, once again, this deck is very much... There's two things it does. It's a lot of poking. And so typically I try and play him a little bit more cautiously and only get him in there when he will secure a kill. And he won't die. For a while, I actually ran the Rejuvenation Ring as well for him, because he typically gets 2 attacks off whenever he's engaged. So I prefer to keep him up longer as opposed to making him deal more damage, because I have other sources of damage that I usually bring to bear. And honestly, I feel like the Aura gives... I mean, it's not quite as much damage because, you know, Hostile obviously double procs on an attack and Manic. Right. But the Aura does give some of the damage that the Hostile gives without having to pay life for it. I considered switching to Hostile, and I had played it for a little while with it, but I just prefer the Aura.
Okay, excellent. So we're certainly looking forward to the next expansion, then kind of drawing more off of these type of design features. So I know you've mentioned it in the forums and you know, and then here. So are there definitely going to be more champions developed around the same style as the Rage then?
Not necessarily, like not like, you know, Razor Circle 2 where he is Limbo. Limbo is probably going to be on him only.
Okay.
There is another Circle champion coming called the Enforcer of the Circle, who is kind of like a Dark Ranger, you could say. Oh
wow, cool, man.
But with the next expansion, it's more of a global phenomenon where the ramifications are outside of the Fur now. You know, it's affecting everyone else. So it's pretty much an all-encompassing thing as opposed to just within the forest.
Cool deal, man. Thanks for the insight on that. So here we go, the next piece, and I applaud you for playing this rune. I don't understand why more players actually don't run this little guy in more wizard decks, because I guess prior to your throne change, he was nearly invulnerable for a while, but now with the throne change, I mean, he's still going to have some really neat abilities out here. The Wisp, you've got 1x Wisp, you've gone with the Soul Sift and the Phase Shift upgrades. So obviously not using the Magic Nova because you're going to gain that through your throne. So tell us about the Wisp and you know, how he kind of fits in, you know, and how you use him.
Yeah, I typically use him for the Magical Bomb. Again, much like the Fae Enchantress, he's here to help with defense, high defense units, and to just give a little bit more longevity with Nexus Aura, as well as Grand Entrance. I keep wanting to like sacrifice him at some point, like run him like into death so that I can get an extra spell off of Sosif, but doesn't really work. You know, KF doesn't really have the tools to kill him. I can't cliff him because he has Slight, but it's something that's still always in the back of my mind. How can I get the Wisp kill so that I can cast an extra spell next to him?
Yeah, that's cool. I've never really thought about that in the middle of a game. Like, oh man, I need to get that guy killed so I can get another spell off. That's great. That's great stuff, man. All right, so 1x Wisp, and then a little guy that I think when you did the big revamp to Pox, with, you know, kind of showering over a lot of those runes with cost adjustments and stuff, A lot of folks felt that this little guy right here kind of caught some negative vibe from you or something. They felt that his pricing is a little bit too pricey for what he brings to the table. But you're using the Wizard of the Ways. You've gone with the Sunder and the Teleport 3 upgrades. So how effective is the Wizard of the Ways? In your battle group, is he a rune that you try to get out every single game, or what exactly?
He is not, a key deploy, but I do bring him out fairly often, especially on specific maps where his mobility helps a lot of stuff. What I like about him is, again, he's sort of coming from the KFST side of things. It's a Sunder where, every Sunder helps every attack. And so, again, this is harkening back to the whole theme of the deck of just getting a lot of small attacks and, where the Apprentice Mage come from. And this particular deck, I guess, is a little bit less on that regard compared to the KFST version. And maybe I should play that one for you at some point as well. But the KFST version has all the, a couple of extra multi-attackers and the Everfrost Manacles, which then all stacks asunder and soften and all this stuff. And just
nice.
Allow you to run around somebody a little bit more efficiently.
Okay, good deal. So 1 times Wizard of Ways, and that actually finishes up your champions. So there's your wizard side and elemental side with your champions, and then for your spells, 1 times Bullseye. Now this spell is pending a nerf or an adjustment, if you would rather call it that. I think you have decided to maybe give it Skirmisher so that it can't just outright roll shrines all that easily. So tell us about Bullseye and maybe some future things to see with it.
Yeah, I actually don't cast the spell too often, and I really should do it more often. I tend to lean more towards the straight AEs when I'm actually playing, but it has proven effective, especially against some high priority targets that have a lot of hit points. But typically, I don't. I try and save it for when I really need it, and then in a number of games, I just end up not casting it. So, but yeah, Skirmisher, I think will help blunt the Shrine Rush aspect of it. Most players don't really like when they get Shrine Rush, and they don't feel like they have had any recourse when somebody rains a lot of damage on them. So,
okay, fair enough.
I don't think it really hurts its general use, just that particular scenario.
Sure. All right, so Combined Effort, here's yet another spell that you're thinking about kind of reeling in a little, especially, I guess, because of the synergy that just plays perfectly into this style battle group that you're playing. But Combined Effort, and I'm going to read it for the folks out there because they may not fully understand this, but friendly champions lose all AP, and you gain Nora equal to 25, which is the actual cost of the spell, plus the AP lost by non-illusion, non-summon champions. So what the issue with this spell is currently is that it's going to actually cost 20 Nora if you have an elf in play, the Chain Fae. So that actually lowers its cost to 20, and then you're going to gain any AP up and beyond that. With Chain Fae, because typically she's a unit that has a lot of stored AP. So this makes it extremely efficient, and you are thinking about reeling this one in a little. Is that right?
Yeah. So it's a spell that probably I may need to change again, but any spell that basically pays for itself without any additional interaction is likely going to be a problem either now or in the future. Whether it's a power level issue or a trick deck issue, it's the kind of spell that it's a design alarm bell in that, okay, you cast it and you get back exactly the cost you paid for it. So there's something going on there that is breakable because of that. And then with the introduction of the Chain Fae with Favor, what is happening is you can cast a spell and gain Nora immediately without anything being actually, without any additional AP. You gain 5 Nora just by casting it.
Sure.
And so having it proc adaptive on both Oracles and the Chain Fae in that scenario ends up making it extremely efficient.
Nice. Okay. So I guess we'll keep our eye out for adjustments for that one. And then Cultivate the Earth. Not too many people run this spell. And I'm going to read it because I'm going to have to even, kind of refresh myself. But all affected spaces is an area of effect 5. All affected spaces become grass for 5 rounds, and you receive an additional 5 Nora per round for the next 5 rounds. So again, you've got a spell that's going to pay for itself over time, and I guess it kind of fits exactly in the same spot that Combined Effort does. It's an extremely efficient spell that ultimately pays for itself, and it fuels this battle group with the adaptives.
Yeah, so it's another cheap spell that I can cast. So the question is, why don't I run 2 Combined Efforts? That's really where it comes down to. Why is 1 Combined Effort and 1 Cultivator? I typically find Combined Effort comes down off cooldown fast enough for me to reuse it anyway. In some cases, I do want more than 1, but I like the additional utility that Cultivate the Earth has in the terrain change. In some matches, it's been crucial in order to get me over some water with the Rage, or the Guardian of the Circle, or Tar, or whatever it is. Being able to overwrite a large segment, and it is large, of terrain at will for essentially net of 0 Nora over time is very good. With the nerf to the Chain Fae and removing Favored, the Cultivate the Earth may not be as good since you are paying a little bit more upfront at that point. So.
Sure. Okay. Well, good deal. Cultivate the Earth ×1. And how has the override in the terrain gone? I mean, I know that you guys worked really hard on that, and there was some issues with bugs and stuff like that, but it looks like finally you've gotten it kind of where you want it. Are you pleased with that turnout?
The terrain changes?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I am. I think it's one of those cases where Pox is a really complex game, as you well know, and our viewers well know, but with the terrains, there was a bunch of unwritten rules, some of which I didn't even know, in regards to how it's done. And on the programming side, adding a new terrain is extremely problematic. Players may remember all the issues we had with Ooze when the Slags came in, and how it didn't play well with other terrains. And so this was an attempt to streamline all that and just have a last-in. I don't know what the term for this would be, but it basically the last terrain that enters is the last terrain that is the terrain that is there, right, as opposed to having obscure rules as to how one overrides the other. We do still have some issues, like for example, Phil currently is doing ice on everything as opposed to just on chasms, and that's because the way things were coded in the past, Phil basically just says check to see what terrain it is, and then, well, it doesn't really check, I guess. It's more like Phil actually tries to add ice on everything, and then has specific flags as to what it shouldn't overwrite. Oh. Is actually what it does. And so what we did was we simply bypassed that portion of the code and just said, if you put down terrain, you automatically overwrite whatever other terrain there is. And so Phil then now says add ice to everything, and there are no exceptions except for the fact that chasm is not technically a terrain, and so it doesn't put anything in there and just overwrites ice and everything. Yeah, so there are some issues like that. It's more of a specific rune issue. The system itself is now easier, and any new stuff that puts in terrain will function just fine. But old runes that had special cases and exceptions and rules are going to have a problem.
And well, I'll tell you what I know that this is one thing. This is kind of like the squirrel running inside the car. You don't really notice the engine running. But this is the kind of work that you've done for the game that, I think a lot of, especially your more seasoned and experienced players, can really appreciate, because, at the end of the day, you guys really don't get paid for going back and doing changes like that. And so, me as a player, and I think the community as a whole, really appreciate your effort, Sok, for, going in and caring and listening to the community on things like that. And it has made a difference. I mean, the terrain now is easier to predict. You know exactly how it's going to interact. And I think, for the most part, I think that you've definitely got, our appreciation for, for continuing to work on things like that. So thank you for that. That's good stuff.
Yeah, and I know that some players have been sort of thinking that we're just releasing content, we're not doing a lot of stuff, and that is somewhat true in that our agents have been busy with some other initiatives that I can't really talk about right now, but hopefully soon Hawk can talk about it a little bit. Players, if you're listening, we are supporting the game, we are sticking around. As I've mentioned to a few players, I had a pretty good job up in San Francisco, and I love Pox, and that's what, and I came back, but I wouldn't have if I didn't think this game was sticking around. So I'm pretty much invested. So.
Well, hey man, thanks for that too. That speaks volumes. So we really appreciate that encouragement. All right, so back to your spells. You've got Overgrowth. Sock, I think this is just a brilliant. I don't know if you personally designed this one or what, but I really like the design of this rune. Target relic gains immobile and pry. You had to put the pry, in there because of a few broken things that were happening with it, but I think you fixed them up with that. And so the spaces around it become vegetation, and then after the effect wears off, the relic is destroyed, and 3 level 1 real saplings are deployed. So Overgrowth, it's a really cool spell. How did this spell even come about of entering the game?
Yeah, so Overgrowth, it is my design. I don't remember exactly sort of where it came from in terms of my brain, I guess. I mean, I have to design so many runes and stuff, so I don't remember particularly, but it could have been one of those spells where I was just looking at pictures and like, oh, it's kind of cool that trees grow into, plants, not plants, but buildings and other stuff, and then eventually it sort of just takes over, and that's sort of the flavor that it's going for. And so initially the spell was going to destroy the relic and then spawn the sapling, but then I felt that it was too easy for your opponent to simply destroy his own relic, or it would prevent you from destroying the relic yourself if you didn't get the saplings. And flavor-wise, it didn't make sense either, in that in an area where there's a lot of vegetative growth, they're just going to grow whether there's a building there or not. It's right. Dependent on the building.
Sure.
But I did like the clause of requiring that it targets a building. I think that like Stellar Horizon, it gives a new sort of way to utilize spells.
Cool deal. So 1 times Overgrowth for that nasty relic removal and a surprise at the end, and then 2 Stellar Horizons. And again, you really caught a lot of flack on this from the community, and I think a lot of times they kind of bark before they think a lot of times. But you got criticized for making this an exotic spell. The spell is great. I mean, it's fantastic. You compare it to other spells of its type, especially in this type of battle group that you're running, where you've got a lot of wizards and things. Stellar Horizon is just a fantastic spell. So why is it an exotic level, if you can comment on that? And you do have 2 of these, so tell us about Stellar Horizon in general, Sock.
Yeah, so conceptually, when I do initial design, I have some idea of the rarity in this, but that's typically for champions, and a lot of times it changes anyway. Like, for example, the mixed Amaranth was actually an uncommon to begin with, and then eventually we moved it up to exotic. So there's all kinds of shifts like that happens. And in particular for spells, relics, and equipment, typically they don't really have a rarity assigned until near the end. And so in this case, Stellar Horizon was just another spell. So the exotic thing is kind of more of a business decision. It was something that to try and produce more chase in the expansion, and to try and reintroduce something that we had shied away from for a long time. And I know that players have a lot of reasons against it, but it's Pox is a game that changes over time, and one of the things is that we want to experiment and want to change, and part of the thing with the monthly bundles, for example, we're going to change how they're done each month just to see what sticks, what players like, and that kind of stuff. So I do want to try, if we do exotic spells again, and I'm not saying we will, but if we do, I do want to try and do something to make non-exotic runes more interesting. I think that's a space that we could explore, but obviously it's difficult.
Sure. So the spell itself, it does 12 damage if you target your own guy, and if he's a wizard, it's going to do 12 damage and 8 damage if it's not. So to me, it looks like you've even got really good, a design to this spell. It's only 40 Nora, but it has to target a wizard to have its maximum, advantage. So it's not just going to fit necessarily into every single deck out there,
Yeah, so targeting your own champion was sort of the key to this rune. It's similar to Overgrowth in that it's a special targeting condition that it requires, unlike most spells. And one of the things that I'm trying to explore is, allowing players to, allowing me, I guess, to have more design space in how things are created and how things are utilized. And so with Stellar Horizon and Overgrowth, I wanted to explore some alternative targeting criteria because spells in general are sort of like this free form thing. You just drop it anywhere and it goes off. And so I want to do something more interesting there. And by doing that, I understand it's a restrictive element, and so the spell's actual power is increased relative to other spells of its type, just to compensate for the fact that there is a restriction there. So it's a drawback and a way to give it more power at the same time.
Good stuff. So 2 times Stellar Horizons, and then speaking of exotic, type spells or legendary, rarities, things like that. You got 2 times Thorn Collections. This spell's been a staple for KF for a long time. You've got 2 of them in your battle group. Any particular reason, or just efficiency, or what? Tell us about Thorn Collection.
They're just good, and in this particular deck, I'll actually cast Thorn Collection to hit my own units in some cases, just to get more Nora out of it, so I can continue casting more spells. So it is a very efficient rune, and some people would call it overpowered still. I do remember as a player, I argued strongly for nerfing this rune back when it was, I think, 25 or 30 Nora.
Wow.
One of the charts I created was basically, calculating the efficiency of this versus other AE spells for additional targets, and against a single target, it really wasn't any more efficient than the other spells, other than the fact that they cost more upfront. But so it really starts cheaper, and then it just was escalated in terms of efficiency way beyond anything else in the game because of the Nora refund. Right now, I think it's in a decent spot in that it is sort of iconic, and we sort of Pox is a game that you want there to be certain things that just say that sort of is my faction. My faction has these elements. If everything and everybody is sort of vanilla, the game becomes much less interesting, I think.
Sure. So 2 times Thorn Collection, and it seems to be in a pretty good place. Nora-wise, I haven't heard any complaints on it in a while. So it must be in a pretty good spot right now, anyway. So. All right, so on to your relics. You've got the KF banner, the Pride of Cthir. War banners are still extremely efficient for their Nora cost. They're going to give 5 extra hit points and a point of damage to all of your guys. So any comment at all about the war banners, or where they're at, or maybe where they're going?
I almost deploy the banner exclusively in a font contesting situation. If I'm going for damage, I'll typically put the tower up first. I'm not expecting any changes to the war banners anytime soon. They're an interesting rune. I don't think they have a relatively small effect compared to a lot of other stuff, even though they're very cost efficient. And it's nice that full faction decks have something that gives them a leg up.
Sure. Okay, so 1 times war banner, and then the newly changed. We'll use that word. Some people have called it a nerf. Some people have called it a lateral change. Throne of the Circle. It now gives Amplify Magic of 10%, and friendly wizards have spell resistance and Magic Nova 3. So why? All right. So my only question for you was on this change right here. Why did you go completely away from? It used to give immunity to magic. Why not give some sort of magic, resistance 3 or something like that? Why did you go completely away from its? I mean, really, this is a completely different rune than what it was. No font powered, no, cancel spells. It's a completely different rune now. So tell us about, what thoughts went into the Throne of the Circle.
Yeah, so I did want to, keep sort of the flavor of it, and I think to that end it does. Amplify Magic was something that sort of wasn't there before, and thematically I wanted to push sort of the circle in a little bit more of an aggressive direction, as opposed to purely defensive, which is sort of a little bit of where the flavor of this is now coming from.
Okay.
Resistance magic is still very powerful, and that's sort of ultimately what led me to shy away from it. Immunity is obviously much better, but resistance is still fairly powerful to grant to an entire battle group in some cases. I mean, obviously it's wizards only, but yeah. And Magic Nova 3 also helps wizards in a different manner by giving them an alternative damage attack. It's not on the attack chain. It ignores defense, and it's melee range. So a lot of times what ends up happening is I'll drop one in the circle for a surprise round of Novas when the opponent thinks that I cannot really retaliate.
Cool deal. So there you go. So there's the new Throne of the Circle. You've got one of those guys, and then I noticed that you're running 2 of the Towers of Amaranth. All right, so the Towers, a really different style of relic than we've ever seen in this game. Tell us about the Tower of Amaranth and why you run 2 of these especially.
Yeah, so the tower is actually Zeron's design. I mean, it's not exactly what was designed there, but it is a player-created rune, so shout out to Zeron. I really like the design. You know, it's a very interesting rune. It sort of fits the whole fairy, feeling and theme, and it played perfectly into the lore of Amaranth that I was trying to build. So the whole idea is that she has built a bunch of these towers all over the forest to do research. The fairies actually come from a different sort of dimension, if so to speak, called the Conclave, and we'll be exploring that in the next expansion as well.
Cool deal.
So they come from a place called the Conclave where time moves a lot more slowly, and so in order for her to perform her experiments and have them have a relevance to the outside world, she had to do them outside, and so that's what these towers are for, and that's where she did her research. And so I run 2. I mean, I don't want to say it's out of stubbornness, but I do really want to try and make the best use out of them as possible, and I deploy them very frequently.
Okay.
And again, this is sort of siding with the getting more attacks off and the poking, and
sure,
because it has a large range, and so with the Apprentice Mage bouncing around, hitting. And then when I was running this as a KFST split, the towers in combination with the Manacle, Sunder, and multi-attack were the primary keys to do that. And so I'm still running 2. The cooldown is low enough that I could probably get away with running 1, but it's really nice to, and in some cases, if I'm sort of backed up by like a couple tanky units, like there's this one game where I played where I was facing a Crystal Mastodon, and I dropped 2 towers and just rained it down. it just
tank that, huh?
Even though my attacks weren't doing a lot of damage, the combination of additional attacks and 4 damage from the towers over and over brought it down relatively quickly.
Sweet stuff. So 2 Towers of Amaranth, and then the last 2 runes in your battle group are again fairly much staples in KF. A Shimmering Flower. So you're going to shut down a lot of passive and super champs, I guess.
Yeah, so Shimmering Flowers was a funny rune in that. So back when Corpse was the designer and I was under him in Tucson when we still had the studio over there, I was in charge of doing a lot of relics and equipment in particular. Partly because I don't know if I have a knack for it, or he just didn't like doing them or whatever. But ultimately, I ended up doing a lot of them. And so Shimmering Flower was one of those runes that I was trying to reuse existing mechanics in interesting ways. And so I was like, well, what if equipment just gave a condition and that's always on it? And so Shimmering Flower was born. I tend to favor sort of like unique or simplistic design that still has a lot of power, and that's sort of where Shimmering Flower was coming from. In that I didn't want to do a lot of different wacky stuff. I just wanted it to do what it's supposed to do and keep it cheap. And of course, there was a bug initially where Distracted could be cleansed, and then the programmers had to add in a special flag that says this particular instance of this condition cannot be cleansed.
Sweet. Okay. So, but anyway, so that's great stuff, and so right, and Shimmering Flower still used in today's game because a lot of abilities and things that are activated. It really shuts them down, and so it's a cool design, and still ran quite often. And then you've got a Withering Fern. At the beginning of its turn, the champion loses 3 HP and -1 defense, and we all know that Perseverance champs are countered by this rune if they do not have an equipment on them. Why exactly do you run a Withering Fern?
I mean, it's a fairly obvious include. It deals with a lot of the power champions, and as you said, Perseverance. For this particular deck, it also helps against any sort of high value targets that I can't currently handle. and it sort of forces the opponent's hand into playing a little bit more aggressively, because otherwise the champion on Withering Fern is just going to take down over time, and so it kind of forces them to play into my hand a little bit. Cool
deal. Well, Sokolov, that is your battle group. You call it the KF Wizards. It seems to be focused around spell spam and then the wizard elemental type thing all coming together and blending in perfectly. And listen, we really thank you for taking time to sit down with us, give us an insight on this battle group, on some things to come. And I guess you're going to actually use the battle group now in an actual match and show us how you use a lot of these runes together, right?
Yeah, sure. So I'm in the lobby already, so I'm going to just queue up right here, right?
If you'll give me just a second, but guys, let's join Sokolov now in his match, and we'll. All right, Pox community. So you guys got to see and hear from Sokolov himself with his KF Wizards battle group, and now here he is in a game in the rank queue with that battle group. He's going up against DJ Fad, who is currently ranked 506 Uncommon. And Sokolov, you're currently 510 Uncommon League, but as you said yourself, don't play a whole lot, to stay high ranked, I assume. So.
And I don't play on Sokolov actually. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have a few outs. I think the highest one right now is 100 or so exotic. So.
Okay, there we go. So it looks like you might be.
Yeah, it's fine. The deck is fine.
Okay, good deal. So you're going up against ISST, and from his first to pull, you might be playing a Laos battle group, or maybe Masolbon. So a quick change.
That's going to burn my own Fae. But
little electricity damage never killed anybody. Well, maybe it did in a few instances.
Yeah, okay, think of that afterwards, and I'm like, oh, right.
So the Reckless Teleport combined with Manic makes him a little challenging sometimes to grab fonts. You have to make sure that he Manics correctly. So, right. So Sokolov has positioned him here so when he Manics, regardless of where he goes, he's going to stay inside the font area. And then, so a quick combined effort there. So already it's netted you quite a bit in order, really, right?
Well, it's like 12. I think she had 7 AP there, so.
Okay. And then with the favor cutting into that a little bit too, so really, really efficient. So there's the premonition from the Cooley Slag going off. And now you've got that Guardian up there to help tank up. And that Chain Fae staying healthy, man, with 15 hit points already. So you've done well in keeping her alive despite the fact that you've already tossed out quite a few wizards.
Yeah, the adaptive really is what makes her work. Like, without adaptive, she barely pays for herself in terms of taking damage and then generating AP. So with the adaptive, it kind of builds a little bit, but
the only problem with your opponent's battle group is it looks like he's kind of running a Soulbond version here. And the problem with Soulbond against your style of play is that your hit and run damage is going to be kind of mitigated, especially with the heal mass from the Paragon. So, he's actually running a close counter to your battle group in a way.
Yeah, so I'm going to see what happens here. I typically end up going a little more aggressive than not, so.
Okay, so he portals the Chain Fae over to allow her to get a couple smacks in. There's the tower. Withering Fern on the monk. Gonna whittle him down. And a Reckless Port just off key. Boy, good old Reckless Teleport, huh?
Yep.
Should allow him to man again, though. So she does get off attack, but it's all washing down the line with the Soul Bond.
No, the Manic didn't go in the direction I needed.
So Soul Bond, how do you like this ability? Is it we've seen quite a few decks here recently with trying to make this work, Sock. So how do you like Soul Bond?
It's actually on the list to be changed. There's a little bit too many abuse angles with it that makes it much stronger than it should be.
Okay.
It's an interesting design, but there's certain decks that come out great.
So let's see, and another Jenga Arcanus. Man, that guy's got some stats because the Pride of Valor does not go against the Soul Bond, so he's got some pretty amazing stats.
Yep.
So Fey Oracle?
Yeah, so I need to
So the Cold Snap, and then you pull your fairy back a little.
Yeah, I need to build up a little bit more momentum before I can go in.
Okay. That Red Fist he's a scary little being right now, especially with that keystrike going on. And Soul Bond with the Heal Mass is quite a treat, and now comes a Jakey Maiden to continue that. Just going to be able to really mitigate that damage, off of each other.
Yep.
Shimmering Flower to slow down the Jenga Arcanus a little bit. You really got that Rage of the Circle flopping around all over the place. Cultivate the Earth. So immediately that's going to help both your adaptive, the favor, and you're going to gain extra 5 aura back return. The problem is with the efficiency of Soul Bond and that Heal Mass combination, it's going to be kind of difficult in order to just do a lot of damage.
Yeah.
He disarms the Shimmering Flower on the Jenga and then firebombs you for a few points. That toughness 3 on that guy is really, really nice. I mean, he's going to help mitigate that charge damage and everything. Just cast spare parts. Very interesting. So another combined effort. If I caught that right, yeah. And out comes Mentalist. So Sock, what perspective is it coming from a designer? You're obviously in the behind the scenes in the game. How does it feel or whatever to be able to come out and see all of your ideas working together to create a game that, thousands of players play? How is that side of it?
It's really a lot of fun. I mean, a lot of people want to get into gaming, and it is pretty much an incredible job that I'm able to do, and I'm pretty thankful that I'm able to do it.
With the Invigorate, he's got that red fist right up in your backyard.
Yep.
And that key strike is going to hurt. $25 damage. We'll see if he adds a charge flame to that. Nope. You want to hang on to his charges.
He casted something which appears to have been probably righteous deflection here.
Okay.
So we'll just lock him in.
So, Rage of the Circle versus Jangar Arcanus. We'll see how that one plays out. So, you're going to maybe just try to put some pressure on his shrine at this stage?
Yeah, that's the plan.
And that Soul Bond really disperses that damage very nicely. So you handed over your font.
Yeah, I'm not paying enough attention.
Man, that Jangar Arcanus deals out a ton of bomb damage there.
I'm getting so many tells.
It's nice to be famous. So with so many ideas coming from the community stock, how do you siphon through all that? I mean, because everybody wants their idea to be seen in the game, and obviously you can't treat everybody. But how do you siphon through all that stuff?
A lot of it just comes down to trying to listen to as many people as possible, and then trying things out on my own before I make a final decision.
So that's going to take care of the Chamber Arcanus. And that Rage. I'm going to go ahead and top out his font. So a font for a font here. We've thrown in the banner to counteract that. More premonition for everybody. Fun times. Wow, so the Soul Bond really working perfectly against your style of play, unfortunately, because of all the... You've got a lot of hit and run damage, and it's just kind of mitigated by that Soul Bond. And then the Heal Mask combo just makes it all the more challenging.
Yep.
But the good news is you really have a decent shot at this game. Sokolov, his shrine is down to just 58. You've got a Mentalist, Mentalist, however y'all want to pronounce him, within double tap range of that thing. So if he's not aware, and then with the Rage beating down on it too, well, that helps.
Yeah, I don't run any cleanse, so.
Okay, so he'll be sitting there for a minute. Wow, that Red Fist is nasty.
Now I can't actually nerf Soulbond, because if I do, then it will be seen as a reaction to this game.
Hey, well, you are a lead designer, so I mean, you know, you've got, you know, whatever goes, man, you know. So it's going to come down to the clock here. I think Shrine versus Shrine is kind of the way this is looking. So we'll see how this one goes down. It's going to be close. Going to try to keep his position away, and the Force Bear is just nice. That's definitely going to buy you a free turn. So there's a Wisp that's going to slow down that Blue Fist for a little bit. 58 health on that Shrine. So close. So he's going to warp the Chain Fae over. Give it a little love tap. Mentalist is going to lay down some love. That's going to leave it at just 28. Raider's Circle gets his feelings back. So we'll see how he plays here, man. You've got him on the ropes. It's going to be tight. He goes ahead and fortifies.
Interesting that he didn't kill the Rage that turn. Maybe he's going to stall it. I don't know. But
yeah, he really likes those charges, but I think I would have probably gone ahead and put out some free meat. and all those nice little dev features of the game. Nerf Soulbond. Overpowered Nerf. By the way, I did very much like your Nerf thread, the response to Nerfs. Very good stuff. You can tell that there was a lot of research went into that.
It was fun. I wanted to make one of those for a while. So
there you go. Well, it was very, very nice, very classic, good stuff. So we appreciated it.
All right, so I'm gonna try and kill the red fist this turn here.
The red fist?
Unless I get force buried in.
Okay.
No, well I can't now. I can't force buried it. Except I think he just doomed his own Jakai Maiden.
Okay, I'm not exactly sure how or why your Rage of the Circle died. Now that is one of the complaints to Soulbond, that the animation does go kind of slowly at times.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy.
Oh. Okay, so somehow or another, I must have missed this totally. The blue fist has a frost aura and a fire aura going on somehow.
Oh, he gave him Mail of Barbs. And so it has a bunch of stuff.
Okay, I didn't know it did all that, though. Okay, well that's interesting. Alright, man, so coming down to it, you got 28 hit points left in the shrine. I don't know if he's smart, he might go ahead and transfigure here, because you're just a couple spaces away from laying some love down with Mentalist again.
Yeah. But yeah, I didn't quite follow where he got the auras either.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I mean, that guy is loaded up.
I think we definitely missed something at some point.
He even has a rank of multi-attack. I don't think. I don't know where all that came from. Oh, okay. Spare parts.
That's right. He did cast that a long time ago.
Yes, sir. All right. All right, so there's the transfigure. He's going to try to get out of the way of your Mentalist there. Not a bad move at all. But 53 hit points, it's all he's got. Of course, you're down to...
He did take my shrine down quite a bit, but
yeah.
I should be able to get the red fist this turn here.
Okay. So bye-bye red fist. That's going to eat up Soulbond. Still showing that he has reflexes for some reason. Kind of strange.
It wasn't.
Tower of Amaranth damage is what's getting soul bonded there. I would imagine. So there goes the red fist. He's done. And you're going to lock in place again. Slayos. $33 life. Combined effort. Okay, so you just overgrowthed your own throne, is that right?
Yes.
Very cool. With all the spell spamming, the Fey Oracle up to 13 damage.
Yeah, so I overgrowth my own throne because I knew that the Wisp wasn't going to survive this, so at least that way I'll be contesting it again.
Okay.
And if he kills the throne, give me enough time to get back over there with my champions.
So he's actually going to leave them both alive. Well, no. The Fire Aura and the Frost Aura is going to take care of the Wisp. But that throne is going to hang around unless he comes up with a different plan. So are you fairly pleased with the way the Fey Oracle's worked out then, Sokka? You know,
yeah, I mean, she does feel a little bit more efficient than she should be, but overall, it's, yeah.
See if you're able to outlast this one and pull this one off.
Yeah, I can just force bury those guys like for an eternity. So. Somebody keeps messaging me telling me to make something 10,000 damage and just win. And I could.
Oh, wow. And he could. Very nice. So there's the free saplings.
Wow, my overgrowth just like went all over the place there.
Yeah, no doubt. But the great news is you're definitely going to recontest that font. And you're going to go ahead and dig them in, huh?
Yeah, why not?
33 life.
Yeah.
Minus 0.
It's just fun.
So the lockdown with the oracles, that's just fun.
Oh. Shouldn't be attacking that one.
The problem going for DJ right now is he's lost the ability to deploy. So I think that's one reason why he's really working hard to try to keep that fawn up there. But boy, you've got that sucker locked down for a little while. You're about to break the soul bond train, Sock, if your shrine can hold out.
Just in case.
So there's a fortify from you. 28 to 25, but he's already... He's going to try to clear out... He's going to try to shave down the force some here. He'll probably be able to do it with hits like that. Nice. He trimmed the woods a little bit there. The problem is he's left himself wide open. So Counterspell Mastery, stop DJ Fab spell.name.39.
Yeah, I gotta fix that.
Well, fortunately, we already knew that you were working on that in the forum, so we're well aware. Good stuff.
I think he casted Impervious and then casted it again.
Alright, so Sock running everything down here on the line. There goes Blue Fist. That's not good. And man, there's that Fleshbite zombie still running around, brother. He's been all over the map. There's a love tap from Mentalist. That's going to give him Era Eater. Thorn Collection.
Didn't quite get him there.
And a Magic Nova 1.
Yeah, I thought I had a second Nova, but I forgot that. Wait a minute. The Trickster should get oh, that's
yeah,
right.
You're thrown. Yeah, you're
yeah,
thrown.
I thought I had the Thrown out still for some reason.
Well,
Silly.
somebody overgrowthed it.
That's right. You're right. I remember now.
Okay, and see, that's why they complained about the rage right there, because now that nice little Fleshbite's going to be right back to full health. Oh, fun times. Hey man, while I got you, I got to poke some fun. That's good stuff.
Yep.
Alright, so you've got him locked down.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it almost doesn't matter what I do.
Mentalist takes another little bit of love tap, but mitigated that fairly well with the regen. And the shrine has seen better days. Bullseye, INC. And that's going to do it. The professor, designer, the main man, Sokolov, you grab a win today, man, with the Wizard Battle
Yeah,
Group.
it's uncommon, so.
Hey, but you know, that's all right, man. You got to show us, you know, exactly how the battle group works, and you've really, you know, given us a lot of insight on the game, and we really appreciate it. So thanks for sitting in and doing an episode of this, Sock. It's great stuff, man.
No problem.
All right, brother. Well, community, we'll catch you guys next video. Sock, and guys, we'll see you in game.